The Ryanries Show from Southern California. This is The Ryanries Show. Post your questions using @ryanries on his Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. Are you ready?
All right, it is going down. This Saturday night, we have an epic show. I promise you, we have an epic show. You should actually text all your friends right now and tell them to tune in to ryan-reese.com because this story is going to be insane. I promise you 100%. I have Tuckermaile in studio. He's the calvarychapel pastor of Boise in Idaho. And I've actually had you on the show before, but we just did a rad, it was just a really cool topical interview, but we were supposed to do your testimony last time, but I'm glad we waited.
We just ended up talking the whole time.
We did.
And we could do that again, or we could...
No, we got to definitely go through this story because your story is insane.
Yes.
Seriously, no, it's really radical. There's a lot of people I have on the show. You know, we do questions and answers sometimes. We have testimonial. Sometimes I even get pastors or different people in to talk about certain subjects. But this story is amazing because here you are, you know, growing up in Idaho, but you had such a radical testimony in your journey to find faith. And I want to get into it because a lot of people will relate to this because there's many people that have grown up within the church and they've seen their pathway to Christianity. And then there's other people that have grown up without church and they have their pathway to the world. But then there's many people like myself that have had both pathways. You had the option to follow God or the option to do whatever you wanted. And that's the story today. And, you know, I want to just get into it. And so you could just tell people about your journey in faith, how you got to where you're at. Because I personally, after knowing your story, I think it's a miracle that you're even doing what you're doing.
I agree 100%. I think you described it perfectly. There's, you know, we all have our own journeys to the Lord. And for me, I really did have kind of a parallel track. Grew up very loosely with, you know, a church upbringing. My family went to church, but it was never like, hey, if you don't make it on a Sunday, you know, you're in trouble or have a family meeting. It was like, go if you want. If you'd rather watch football, that's fine too.
Right. Was that from both sides of the family?
Yeah, I think
like
so.
Your mom and your dad?
Yeah, I think, you know, growing up in Idaho, it was just kind of it's not like there was any large church or any kind of like giant Christian movement. It was, you know, we went to a calvarychapel, Boise at the time, pretty small little church.
How many people is this?
150, 200 when I was a kid.
Let's give people a little bit of background on Idaho where you're at. So there wasn't any big mega churches. It's just really little, small.
Yeah, it was like most little churches. I mean, Idaho at the time had a population under 1 million for the whole state. Boise was 100,000 people, and I grew up in a distant little farm town outside of Boise in a town that had like 10,000 people. And it was just, looking back on it, was just a really kind of open-handed childhood. It was, you know, like farmland and four-wheelers and hanging out and do what you want. And you know, there isn't a lot of pressure on my life. And and I think those paths kind of came to a head. Both parents really believed in God and kind of encouraged me to go to church. But when I turned 18, so it's like that age where in our culture, for better or worse, you kind of make a decision about your identity. You're trying to figure out who you are. You step out to do your own thing. And at that exact same time, my dad had kind of decided that church was definitely not for him. And my mom is like, hey, the purpose of life is to know God. And so as I'm entering into my senior year of high school, I have this like kind of split kind of parental guidance, if you will.
Crossroads, for sure.
Crossroads. It's like, my dad's like, explore the world, have fun while you're young, see what's out there, no pressure, just figure out who you are and have a blast. And my mom was like, you know, if you honor God, she always told me 3 things: honor God, do your best, and be kind, and everything will work out in your life. But she was like, you got to honor God first. And so
with that said, because this is kind of an interesting way to be looking at things. Most people, it's either like, there's no God, just do whatever you want, or you need to follow God. Here's 2 options. I don't think I've ever heard this story before where you have 2 actual options. Would you think, like, literally, like in your heart of hearts, like, what'd you think about those options? Were you leaning towards like going, forget God, I'm going to go do my thing, or maybe I should follow God? Or was it literally just, you were kind of like back and forth?
Yeah. I mean, it was, in some ways, I think every kid has an instinct to want to honor their parents. And we can totally reject that instinct and say we rebel. But for me, I was like, no matter what I did, I felt like, man, either my mom's going to be happy or my dad's going to be happy. So I felt I was playing with house money. Right. You know, I felt like I had room to kind of explore and at least honor one parent.
You know, actually, now that I'm thinking about this, also, both parents sounds like they were both super cool and laid back in both scenarios. Like, it wasn't coming too hard on either way where it could push away.
Totally.
You know, like, you have to go to church on Sunday. You have to go on Wednesday. If you don't do this, you're in trouble. That could literally push you away.
Well, and then it could have been like, well, I actually don't have to because I can do whatever I want and I still please one parent.
Right.
You know? And so I just, like any kid, just tried to figure out, you know, what was life about, but you don't know. So what do? You just default to, I guess I'll go to college.
Right.
You know,
how'd that go?
So college for me was undeclared marriage, undeclared major. So you go to school. I remember the first, I'm signing up for my classes and the counselor's like, what's your major? I was like, I don't know. Do you need one? He's like, no. You don't need one. I was like, okay, cool, because I don't have one.
Right.
And so college for me was really just to buy a little time and figure out, you know, the default answer was answered for me. Just go to college and see what happens. And so I kind of went through my first year of college trying to just explore. I mean, there was times in my first year of college where I would check out church still and kind of go on my own, which was a new thing because I'm like, oh, this is my choice to go. And then you definitely get the freedom of college where I'm like, where are the parties at? You know, like where are the girls at? And living on my own, and girls are living on their own. So how do you so I was like trying to figure out how to explore both worlds.
Pretty gnarly, yeah. So when you're in college, how'd that so after being there in a year, what took place next? Did you decide to like get your major or? So
I knew I felt like, you know, you grew up in Idaho. I think one of the blessings of living in a small town is you want to explore. At least I did. I was like, what's out there? How am I going to answer this question if I don't know? And so I'm still trying to I'm kind of letting the default answer define me still. So going into my sophomore year of college, I'm taking out a federal loan and I have a check in my hand for my FAFSA loan to pay for all of my schooling. And I realized that I was just going to deposit in my bank account. Right. And with the honor system, I was going to use it for credits. But I'm sitting in a computer lab literally filling out classes for my upcoming semester. But in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, dude, I got $4,500 in the bank right now. I can do anything I want with that. No one's monitoring that, you know? And so I to this day, I remember I'm in this Boise State computer lab. I minimize the screen that had the academic, you know, classes up, and I open up a screen and I start searching for, you know, flights. Right. And I find a flight to Barcelona, Spain.
Why'd you pick Barcelona? What was highlighted?
I think in the back of my mind, I was like, hey, is there a way I could kind of just have an excuse to leave? So I was like, oh, maybe, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to learn Spanish. So I just started thinking through, like, where do you learn Spanish? So I started looking for flights to Spain. Right. And I didn't know anything about Barcelona. I knew nothing about Spain. And so it was kind of had to do with money. Mm-hmm. And I also, you know, after I had hatched my plan, I went and told my parents, hey, I got great news. I've decided I'm gonna learn Spanish. That's my major now. Whatever, you know. And they're like, "What's your plan?" I was like, "I'm moving to Barcelona." Mm-hmm. And they're like, "Is that an official thing?"
How they take that?
They're like, "Is this through the school?" I was like, "Nah, but I'll come back and test out all the classes. I'll figure it out, you know." And so I get to Barcelona, and that really set into motion. The main thing that I was there for was just to explore. Like, what am I living for?
So, like, where'd you stay? Like a bed and breakfast?
So I booked the flight, and then I reached out to a Spanish language school in Barcelona.
Okay, so you actually went through that?
Well,
kind of.
Not really. I mean, I just was trying to find somebody to know. And so through that school, somebody's like, well, you can get an apartment and I can show you around. And so some guy was like, had an apartment for me. In fact, the first day I got there, I was thinking of like going from, you know, little Idaho kid to actually kind of figuring out how to explore the world. He gives me a key to this apartment. He's like, here's your apartment. I was like, rad, I'm here to explore. So I grab my key, I drop off my bag, and I start walking around. Barcelona. And I have no idea what I'm doing. I have no phone. I have no maps. And I walk around far enough to get lost. Dude, I had no idea where this house was. And so I spent the first day and a half in Barcelona walking around looking for the apartment. I spent the first night I was there on the street, dude.
Dude, are you serious?
Dude, I slept. I remember, like, what am I doing in my life? I have a key and I have a vague remembrance of a building facade.
That is amazing.
I literally did not. I just put my bags down and started walking around and got lost.
Yeah, no, I believe it. It's very confusing.
It's very confusing. I had no idea what I was doing, and I remember I was like, I think this is it. I'm trying my key, and I'm like, and I made it. So that first night of being lost, I was like, dude, I can do this. I can just wander around, you know? And so that turned into me really from Barcelona. I started just kind of looking for opportunities to explore, and I eventually met these 2 Australian girls in Barcelona that told me they were backpacking. I was like, what's backpacking?
Right.
And they're like, oh, dude, backpacking is you actually just travel through Europe and you just try, new locations, and you can stay at these things called hostels. And I was like, dude, that's awesome. They were like, we actually have an extra backpack. Our friend just left. And I was like, I'm in.
You're gone, yeah.
Yeah. And so I met them on a subway. They told me about it, and in a subway in Barcelona. And a couple hours later, they gave me a backpack. And I started traveling with these 2 girls, and we get all the way down to the south of Spain. And they were like, we always wanted to go to Morocco, but as 2 girls, we didn't think we'd go. I was like, let's go. I'll go. And so we get all the way down to Morocco. And by that point, I felt like, dude, I'm a backpacker now. And so I live in Morocco. Is super cheap. I stayed there for about a month. Mm-hmm. And then from there, it just turned into kind of just following the next opportunity. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So those girls go to Portugal. In Morocco, I'd met a guy named Mark, who was a Canadian soap opera actor, and he had a connection in Paris. And so I went to Paris and started couch surfing in Paris with Mark. And Mark got a gig to go back to Canada, but left me with the contact for an organic farm. Mm-hmm. So I go to this organic farm, and I'm working as a organic farmer, room and board in Normandy, France. Amazing, beautiful. Right. So now I'm like, I got to tell my parents I'm learning French. changing the plan.
They speak Spanish in French.
Yeah. So I was like, dude, I learned more French than Spanish probably because I'm on a farm actually living.
Exactly.
You know? And so from that farm, I met these 2 girls that were from Northern California. We kind of formed a friendship, and they were like, hey, we're gonna go to Belgium and just go hang out and party. I was like, I'm in. And so it was literally just me.
Yeah, you're just living.
I'm following the wind.
Yeah.
I'm just kind of following the wind, and anywhere I could pick up a little cash. So the farm put a little money in my pocket, and that's really where I have a story in this travel that kind of became more of a defining time. In Belgium, as the first night we were there, we were just kind of hanging out. We were partying. We had money, bought some beers. I actually bought a stereo from a homeless guy on the street. Mm-hmm. Bring the stereo back. We're partying and hanging out, and I'm cranking music because back in the day, this was pre-iPod. So I hadn't listened to music the whole time I was on that farm, dude. Oh, so I was like, dude, I bought the Beck Sea Change CD, and I was cranking it, and I'm like, dude, this is awesome. and I felt like $1 million, dude. I had money, a CD player, and some beers, and I was hanging out with girls.
Yeah, that's pretty much that's living it up.
Dude, at that stage of my life, I was like, dude, this little Idaho kid has made it. You know? And that night, as we're listening to music, this lady comes in. She works at the hotel. She says, hey, you guys are being loud. Turn it down. Yeah. And I'm learning how to party. So I'm like, yeah, we'll turn it down, turn the knob. And then she leaves, and I'm like,
turn it back up.
Back and forth. Finally, she confiscates my CD player. She puts it into this little hotel lobby, closes this gate like you see at the mall when they close their store. And I'm like, watch this, ladies. I'm going to go steal my CD player back. And I go over there. The coast is clear. She's retired for the night. And I prop open that little gate, and I sneak under, and I rummage around the back room, find my CD player right next to a safe. Mm-hmm. And I'm looking, and I'm like, dude, and I see that the safe wasn't closed all the way.
Cracked open.
I peek in there, and I see a stack of euros, and I'm like, traveling through, and I'm chasing the wind. Mm-hmm. And so I leave everything as it was. I go back, find these girls, and I say, hey, tell them the story. I just found a safe with a bunch of cash in it. If you want to steal this with me, go pack your bags, meet me in 30 minutes in the lobby. Mm-hmm. And, I'm go back and I'm packing my bag, and I'm like trying to hype myself up to rob a hotel, And back in my mind, I'm thinking, if they don't show up, this is off, And and I get to the hotel little meeting area, and they're like nervously waiting with their bags, and I'm like, okay. And so run in there, have a little Crown Royal whiskey bag, and I just empty the safe, put a bunch of euros in there. We run to the train station, and the first ticket that they have out of Belgium is like a midnight train to Amsterdam. Mm-hmm. And so now
Oh no, Amsterdam with a wad of cash.
A wad of cash.
Not good.
Two girls from Humboldt County. I never heard of Humboldt County in my life, dude. I'm like, what's Humboldt County?
Yeah, if you would have known, you'd have been like, I'm not running
I'm
with these
out.
girls.
Yeah, I'm
this
out.
Is not good.
Yeah.
A lot of cash, 2 girls from Humboldt.
They
And
take me to Amsterdam, dude.
Okay, so what happened?
So we get to Amsterdam, and one of the girls is like, hey, my brother.
I almost died in Amsterdam twice. But anyway,
Dude,
keep
I
going.
believe it, dude. I saw some near-death experiences in Amsterdam for sure. And I'm an Idaho kid, so all of this is just.
This is insane
I'm just
for you.
chasing the wind, dude.
You guys,
And
Idaho kid from
Yeah.
back then, you don't understand. Like, this is farmland.
I'm not.
Nothing like crazy for like
Every one of these experiences, I was like, oh, I didn't know this was a thing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I was like, I didn't know this was a
Exactly.
thing. And so we get to Amsterdam, and they have that Crown Royal bag, and she's like, my brother once stayed at a place called the Flying Pig Hostel. We got to check it out. And I'm like, okay, cool. And we get there, and they have this huge downstairs lounge, and it's like, come to find out, it's like a weed smoker's mecca. You get to Amsterdam, and you get to this lounge, and it was like, dude, in some ways, I have like great memories. Like I learned how to play backgammon down there. I never knew what a bong rip was. I didn't know any of that stuff. I'm learning all of that stuff real time.
The magical mushrooms are heavily,
dude. I didn't know what edibles
Legally.
were, dude. I didn't know any of that stuff.
Yeah.
And so it's
crazy.
I try edibles, and I'm like, I'm still hungry. Can I have some more? And they're like, no. This is not a normal brownie. And so I'm learning all of this stuff, and this is where those paths kept converging. So obviously right now in the storyline of the world and the church and how they parallel, dude, the world is just winning. It's just pulling me in. And I look back at this, and I don't really even share this as like part of my testimony typically, because God smuggled into that little downstairs basement at the Flying Pig hostel in Amsterdam with a kid who's chasing the wind and a little bit of guilt in this Crown Royal bag.
Right. Yeah. Now you got that little bit of guilt.
Oh yeah. Now I'm like, dude. Like honestly, I'm like, dude.
You're like, I'm a thief.
I'm on the run.
Yeah.
Like at any point. I actually remember getting off the train to Amsterdam. They sent a guy through, and he's like, passports. And I was like,
yeah. You're like, oh,
here we
this
go.
is
I was
it.
like,
I know what you're saying.
And he looks at my passport, and he's like, go ahead. I was like, thank you so much. I'm out of here. So I got, I've just got this.
Yeah.
And I'm downstairs in that basement, and I'm just, all these new things are coming at me, and I grab a book off the bookshelf in this little basement of the hostel, and it's called the Bible Code. Dude, and if you know anything about the Bible Code, this is the Bible Code 2, it was called. It was basically this weird idea that if you look at the ancient text of the Bible, so you look at the original Hebrew, there was this guy who had probably a Amsterdam hostel idea that
he probably spent a lot of time in Amsterdam smoking weed,
and he somehow knew Hebrew, and he said, okay, there's actually a code to the Bible to prove that God can tell the future. And so I'm reading this book, I'm like, dude, tell me more. And his idea was, you take the original Hebrew and you put in these patterns, and if you take the patterns and you take each letter out of the pattern, it starts giving these clues that are prophetic. And so one of them is like JFK killed 1963 or whatever that date was. There was like 9/11 codes. There was like all, and I'm like, dude, imagine this young kid, and everything's coming at me.
Yeah, you're from Idaho.
Yes.
All these new experience. You're on the run. You're high out of your mind.
Yeah, and I'm like,
and we'd get you thinking some crazy stuff, by the way.
And I'm like, dude, that was all predicted.
This is real.
Yes.
Yeah.
And so, the story cannot stop here. The Bible Code is proven to not be a thing.
Yeah.
But the book ends with this guy coding out the Bible, and it says the world's going to end in 2006. And I'm like, dude, I get this like moment where I'm like,
and what year is it?
The year is 2003.
Okay.
At this time.
So you got 3
now,
years.
And I'm like balancing. This is why I'm always like, I don't even like sharing this part, because it was obviously not true.
But let me tell you something. God uses a donkey.
Yes.
Remember, he used a donkey to speak. That was totally crazy.
Yep.
But God could do anything. And I've heard many stories of God using like a lyric in a song from like a non-Christian band. They say something, and then the Holy Spirit starts bringing that lyric to their mind for hours and hours. And that ends up leading them to YouTube to finding Jesus. So God will use anything to get a hold of his people.
And so that's why, I mean, I'll put it on the table and share it.
Yeah.
Because it's like God, what he did in my life is he wasn't telling me when the world was going to end, but he was telling me that my days are numbered.
Yeah.
There's going to be a reckoning for my life. Right. And what if, in my mind, I was like, 2006, I have 3 years to know what I believe. Yeah. And so I'm still in Amsterdam. I'm still going through all the mental headspace of that.
And weed makes you very paranoid, by the way.
Yeah. And it makes, dude,
But it's awesome how God's getting a hold of you.
He's getting a hold of me.
Think about this. You're literally, dude. You're running. You're out of your normal zone. You're weed. You're with girls. You're in this whole element. I mean, he had to get you somehow.
He had to smuggle himself in.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
In
that's
your
what
element,
he did. And that's not like, it's not like I repented in that moment and figured out how to seek God or even go to church. It was just like there was this giant seed that was in my heart. Yeah. And so I spent another 6 months with Europe stories that are all very similar to all of these moments. And by God's grace, nothing tragic ever happens.
Yeah.
And I get to the end of this time where I was just exploring. I thought, you know what, it's time to go back. And so I get back to the States and I'm like, what do I do with my life now?
Right.
Because I really felt this, I feel like I'm a different person now.
Yeah.
I don't feel like this.
And you've experienced, you
are. I'm like, the world is a big old place and there's
Yeah.
so many things you can do if you just step out and do it. I figured out I think I traveled to like 16 countries and I slept on beaches. I was living with a girl in Denmark for a while. I made it all to Poland and hitchhiked, and it was just, I tried all these things.
You see the world, and now you're back here. What'd you even feel like being back here in Idaho?
In some ways, I was like, dude, I can do anything with my life.
Yeah.
Like, not in the prideful sense, but
no, I know
like,
what you're saying. Yeah.
The world is, you can do anything that you want to do.
Yeah.
And so it's not like I had the answer to the purpose of life, but I definitely had confidence. Like, I can do whatever I want. But in that time, I was like, I can't just go back to school, especially if the world's going to end, because it's still in the back of my mind.
Yeah.
So I'm like, I knew about Calvary Chapel because I had grown up in and out of it.
Right.
So I was like, dude, they have a Bible college. So I was like, I'm going to go to Bible college. It must have been the worst Bible college applicant ever, dude. I wasn't.
Just in from Amsterdam.
I remember filling it out. I was like, I don't know. Like, I think they'll take anybody, right? Dude, I literally drive down from Idaho to Bible college. And I was like,
So people that don't know, this is the Bible college that was created by Chuck Smith down in Marietta in California.
Yes.
Right? So you drove down there.
Yes. Okay. And part of that was like, I want to live not in Idaho still. I want to explore it.
Right.
So I've always thought California was cool, ocean, palm trees, beaches.
Yeah.
So California seemed cool. And then also I was like, dude, hopefully Bible college can tell me how to use the next 3 years of my life, because that's what I was working with, a 3-year time frame.
Yep.
And I get down there a week early and I'm like, dude, I'm going to check some stuff out down here. So I was down I was sleeping on couches in Hermosa, dude. Yeah. I get down there. I met a bartender at one of those pier bars at Hermosa Beach. Mm-hmm. And I had a week and I started sleeping on her couch, just hanging out in Hermosa before I make it to Marietta. I remember I get there the day of registration. I was like, dude, I can't.
I'm ready for Bible college.
Yeah, I was like, I got to figure this out.
But hey, you know what I love about this story? This is literally like when you read about the Calvary guys from like the hippie movement when they got saved. You got the Lonnie Frisbee, he was struggling with homosexuality, and then you got this LSD guy running around naked, found God on LSD.
Yeah.
You got Mike McIntosh. He took too much LSD and he thought his head was blown off. He'd look in the mirror and his face was gone. Jeff Johnson was in Hawaii, left California. He was naked in the mountains, waiting for the UFOs to abduct him. Skip Heitzig used to astro travel. He was in a new age in witchcraft.
Crazy, dude.
I mean,
yeah.
So your story, being a Calvary guy, this is kind of like the DNA.
I didn't know it at the time. I was trying to go through the Bible college route, but
this is very common within these guys getting saved radically, and then God uses them greatly. Yeah. So, so here you are. You sign up at Bible college.
Sign up at Bible college, and I'm like,
I'm ready.
Yeah, I'm like, and I was like, I got to figure this out. So I was really, everything in me was like committed.
Yeah, that's what's awesome. The heart was like ready.
Everything in me was committed. In fact, like within the first 2 weeks, some people at Bible college were like, "Hey, let's go drink some beers," and I was like, "I'm telling you guys."
I'm telling you.
I was like, if I wanted to drink beer, I'd be in Europe right now. Dude.
Yeah, exactly.
I'd be back in Hermosa Beach or whatever. Yeah. So I was like, "You guys, I'm trying to not drink beers."
Yeah.
So I went to the dean and I was like, "These guys are drinking beers." Probably very hypocritical of me to do that with like coming off a run of just stumbling into Bible college.
God, but so God was doing something in your heart though. That's what's awesome is he's already starting to prepare your heart.
Yeah.
So how did Bible college go?
So Bible college, I'm actually celebrating my 20 year. Actually, there's a Calvary Chapel Canada pastor that was just in town. I was like, dude, it's our 20 year. He's like, dude, or 20 years in 2 years. You only made it one semester. I was it's our 20-year to our start. He's like, that's not how it works.
So what happened? Well,
so I'm there for a semester, and dude, this is where I really get like such a love for the Calvary Chapel vibe and the movement. And like, dude, I think it was just God kind of coming around me, and I felt so refreshed by it. But at the same time, I was like, I'm not a pastor. And I'm hanging out with these guys, and they're talking about becoming missionaries and becoming pastors. I was like, I got it. God is real. Yeah. Jesus is definitely the best. I like all these Calvary guys too. I remember seeing Chuck in the golf cart riding around. I was like, dude, that guy's a legend. You know, I was like in. But I was also like, but I got to figure out what I'm doing in my life, because I'm not a Calvary guy. I just came here to kind of get my theology checklist, and so I went back to Boise because I was like, I got to go back to real school if I'm going to provide for a family or do whatever I'm supposed to do with my life. I got to make some money. Yeah, you know what I mean. And so I went back to Boise, and basically, you know, it was like, nice knowing you guys. You guys, that was awesome, but I'm not. What do I need a Bible college degree for? Yeah, I would never ever be a pastor. Right. So I was like, thanks for helping me understand like end of times. I'm honestly feeling good about my And then but I went back to Boise. I was like, I don't know my life, and so you know, I have these moments, kind of like the hotel moment where. And maybe we save kind of the shift from Bible college to
well, okay. So before we go into that next half, when you're now back in Bible college,
or back in Boise,
I'm sorry, back in Boise, going back to college. What's your perspective now? Kind of looking at what you've been through. Then you went down to California. You encountered God. Now you're back here in college. Like, how are you looking?
It was the tug of war just went right back to it.
Because that's so common.
Because I was in Bible college, and I was like, every one of these girls, I looked at every girl, and my time there, and I was just like, I don't want to mess up anybody. And that's one of the, like, even having a Bible college girlfriend, I was like, I don't want to mess up her life with me. Yeah. You know, so I almost had like imposter syndrome, they call it. Get back to Boise, I'm like, oh, dude, nobody knows me as a Christian here, and nobody thinks of me as like anybody like trying to pursue anything.
What you're saying is the common. Like the common thing with a lot of people, it's the tug of war. Like I remember trying to get sober, and I'd get sober, I'd plug into church for a little bit, and I'd be doing good, and then I'd get out of my groove and get right back to what it's so easy. This is the common in and out. And even like, you know, Daniel with the whosoevers, he had the same thing. He was in church, and he would start hooking up with girls back and forth. It's just like this common back and forth until there's a day when finally, because God will let you. He'll let you go do your thing back and forth, but there's always a day of, hopefully it's not a day of reckoning where you're like in jail and you're like, okay, but I went too far. Or like me, I OD'd in the hotel.
The point of no return.
Yeah. Or there's a day when finally, when you just encounter God and you go, okay, you know what? I'm sold out. I'm not perfect. I don't have it figured out. I'm going to make a lot of mistakes along the way, like Peter and these other guys that we read about in the Bible, but you're really like sold out, and then God starts truly doing something in your life. And that's what we're going to get to after the break, is when we get to that moment in your life, and it's the journey's still on, because right now you're back in college.
I'm just getting going.
You're exactly.
I'm just getting going.
You had an encounter with God at the Bible college, but just like many people that are actually listening to this right now, you had a moment with God sometime in your life, but then for whatever reason, you got back on the detour route.
It's like the tug of war just gets stronger.
It does. You know? And I think the Bible even talks about how it just talks about how you know, people that get possessed, when they take the demon out, if they don't clean the home and put the word of God in, that demon comes back with 7 more homeboys, exactly, to take care of you. Not that you're demon possessed or anything, but it's the influence of Satan. When you have an encounter with God and then you walk back away from him, he influences you even more. And every time you go back, it's even gnarlier and gnarlier. And I can attest to that 100%. Yeah. So we're going to come back right after the break. But before we go to the break, I want you guys to check out, go to my YouTube, Ryanries Official. Subscribe, share it. There's tons of shows with all kinds of different testimonies. We do like the Wild West. We take questions and answers. You can send in whatever questions. No questions are too crazy for this show. You can go to thewhosoevers.com, book us. We are touring the globe. We just got back from the Philippines. We saw like 6,000 students give their life to Christ. We were going to villages where they didn't even have a church plant. We're planning on sending people there to plant churches right now. The Gideons came with us. We gave out scriptures to all the students. We're going to Chile, all over the United States, Europe, Australia. Continue to book us. We love to come out and do ministry with you guys. I also have a book out. It's called Kill the Noise. It's a discipleship faith builder book. You can get it everywhere books are sold. If you want to read reviews, you can even go to Amazon and you can see how that book has encouraged you guys or other people that have read it. Check us out on social media. We're just excited that you guys are continuing to tune in with us. You know, this show is to build you up in the faith, to teach you. It's the Jesus 101 show, to teach you the basic fundamentals of faith and even through testimony, because testimony is powerful. Just like you're getting encouraged with this guy's story, Tucker from Calvary Chapel, Boise. We have many more online. I will talk to you in 2 minutes. Peace.
More of The Ryan Ries Show coming up. Post your questions at Ryan Ries on his Instagram, Twitter, and or Facebook. Now, back to The Ryan Ries Show.
All right, we are back, and I'm with Tucker. He's the Calvary Chapel pastor of Boise, Idaho. And your last name, because you know, you have a couple different last names.
Yes.
You have Tucker Gmail.
Yes. That's my middle initials, G. My last name's Maile.
So Tucker Gmail.
And then I long to someday live in Hawaii, so my Hawaiian last name is Maile. So
there it is. It's a true story.
Word
Many
of
last names.
Yeah.
Hey, if you guys have been listening to the first half, you've heard this guy just has a crazy story of, you know, he had two different pathways. One, he said, his mom said, just follow God and everything will work out. And then his dad just said, you know, go see what the world has to offer. And now here he is after this journey of going after the world, ended up backpacking through Europe. You know, there's a Tarantino movie about this. It's called Hostel. He lived it. And now you're back in. You've seen crazy stuff. Yep. Amsterdam, everything. I mean, your mind's probably blown. I'm from LA and I went to Amsterdam. My mind was blown.
Yeah,
I was like,
exactly.
what the heck?
Yeah.
So here you are back in the country in Boise, and you're back at the university,
Yep.
college.
Yep.
What happens there? Because I want to go through a highlight reel of different things, because there's many wake-up calls, very radical wake-up calls that happen in your life, leading to the moment of really truly giving your life to Christ.
I think that's the perfect way to state it. You know, we talked about going to Bible college, and I really do think at Bible college I said, God is real.
Yep.
I don't know how to live for you really, but I do believe in you. And so I think God honored that confession and said, okay, even though the tug of war is still there,
Yep.
do you live for God? Do you live for the world? Now God is going to meet me at every stage of the tug of war with a wake-up call. And so that's essentially what happened. I leave Bible college. I say, if I'm ever going to have, you know, a way to make money, I go to college.
Right.
And but that turned into the college experience again. I'm like, at Boise State, I might as well just get back into partying and exploring. And that turned into a wake-up call. Kind of number one was one night I'm just out with a really good friend of mine. It's a Saturday. He had missed his flight back to where he was living, so we had a day just to get one last run in and hang out, and we were just drinking, bar hopping downtown,
Yep.
and that turned into a 2 a.m. run to grab him some orange juice and do some liquids before we crash and try to curb the hangover. And unbeknownst to us, earlier that day, there had been an armed robbery of the U.S. Bank on Broadway downtown. And so there was an all-points bulletin. The guys went in there. There was two guys driving a four-door car. They go in there with guns. They get all the money. They run, and they're at large. So the cops respond by sending an APB, all-points bulletin, to all of the night life of Boise. Say, just be watching out. So we didn't know that. We were just a couple of knuckleheads rolling into a gas station, and by God's sovereignty, I just fit the bill for what this nervous gas station lady had been looking for all night.
Yeah.
So me and my buddy, we're two guys, we're driving a four-door car. As I'm walking in, I find aviator sunglasses on the ground, and I'm literally like slow motion Tarantino walking in from Reservoir Dogs, putting on aviators, and this girl's like, "Oh my goodness,
this is it. They're here to rob me."
This is it." And I'm an idiot. My buddy's an idiot. He's just staring at the orange juice options. I'm waiting for him by the cash register, asking this lady why she's so nervous. I'm like, "What's going on? Like, why are you so nervous? You nervous about the night shift? Like, you get robbed here a lot?" And she had already picked up enough signals to dial 911 and leave it off the hook. She's like, I am bringing in backup right now. The cops are on their way in her mind, and she's just trying to buy time. And I asked her if she's nervous. She's like, yeah. And I was like, let me see your hands. in her mind, she's asking me to stick up her hands. I was like, asking her
to see this.
Yeah, like, let me see if you're shaking. Like, let's see how these nerves look like.
You're buzzing. You're just.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm an idiot. And so she takes that, she picks up her hands, and then she grabs she grabs the tray out of the register, said, please don't hurt me, puts it on the counter. And I'm like, I'm not after your money.
Yeah.
I'm out of here. And so I'm like, hey, bro, we got to get out of here. There's a huge misunderstanding. And we take off down the road. A minute later, cops show up, and she's like, they went that way.
Right.
And so I'm just driving. I see the red and blues, and I'm like, dude, we're getting a DUI. I'm drinking all day, and now I must have been swerving. Pull into a parking lot, and the cop doesn't do anything. I'm like, this is weird. Isn't he supposed to approach we wait 5 minutes, nothing's happening. And we're like, dude, what is going on? Within 5 minutes, we were surrounded by pretty much all of the Boise Police Department. Yeah. And they're giving me directions through a bullhorn to crawl out the window, get on my knees, hands on my head. I look down and I see the red dots. They're ready for a shootout.
Yeah.
I'm like, dude, this is not a normal DUI. Dude, they bag us and tag us and take us in. I was like, I didn't even get to walk the line. What the heck is going on? So they take us to the interrogation room. It looks like this little studio, and they're like, dude, where are the guns? Where's the money? Why did you guys, what was your motive? Why did you rob the bank? Have you robbed other banks? I'm like, I think this is a horrible, horrible mix-up. But I basically just go dark. They throw me in jail, and I call my mom, and I'm like, she's like, you've got to collect call from the Ada County Jail. And I'm like, Mom, I don't know what's going on, but I think there's been a mix-up. And she's like, your name and your face is all over the news. It says you robbed a bank earlier today. And I'm like, are you kidding me, dude? Yeah. This is
big mix-up.
A huge case of mistaken identity. And yet, as I now know, God uses all of these things. It's kind of like how he smuggled in the Bible code. It's like, it's not real, but it's going to be real for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I'm like, oh my goodness, like if you get me out, it's like the classic, like, I don't want to go to prison. If you can get me out of this. So I spent like 6 months basically in forced repentance. I'm like, I'm an idiot. I mean, I'm going through all these court trials and trying to tell people I don't own a gun, and I never was at the U.S. bank, and robbers are still at large, and the news is all over it. And the first time I show up to court, there's like cameras in my face because they're like, who is this? Who is this young bank robber? And so
no, that's gnarly.
It took so long, and I had basically had any pride that I've developed over, the fun run of Europe is like, dude, now people think I'm a bank robber. And so I'm just like, I don't know what to do with my life. You know what I mean? And so over time, it gets further and further reduced. Eventually, I just have to start picking up community service hours. And so I spent time just rehabbing my own identity.
So this was like a major, I mean, I'd be freaking out if I went through this, and even just like going through this for like 6 months. So then you go to God, but then there's because I know we have like a little bit of time left.
Yes.
There was a couple other crazy wake up calls. You ended up like,
so you just essentially, I go from wake up call. Here's the pattern. You get a wake up call, and then you get this little period where it's like what am I doing with my life is forced upon me, and then you survive it.
Yep, and you
survive it. You get out of it. I'm like, wait a second.
You go back.
And so I get a sales job, and that sales job, I got money in my pocket now, and I'm like, wait a second. Like, I survived. I'm not in jail. I'm not in prison.
Yep.
I go right back. That sales job, long story short, actually sends me to Panama City, Panama. Mm-hmm. And now what was a little bit of money in Boise, Idaho doing sales is like, I'm the richest guy on the street now.
Right.
And I'm taking my, broke Europe hitchhiking party habit and infusing it into a party city with a bunch of money.
You always take your habits with you.
I take my habits with me, and now I got money.
True.
So it's like the worst case scenario.
Yeah.
But over time, I'm like feeling this sense of emptiness, and eventually Panama, this whole operation that I'd been working with, doing sales to set up people with offshore accounting, it all came to a head in the financial crisis. Mm-hmm. And the head who started this operation, he actually got upside down in his money, and he started embezzling money out, and he started hatching a plan to flee with a bunch of the investors' money.
Got it.
I'm holding the bag. Mm-hmm. I'm like one of the guys who I'm like, what is going on? The financial crisis just fell upon this company, and there wasn't enough money to pay everybody back. And this guy ran off with the money. Long story, wake up call again. Yep. And I'm the employee that had been selling this stuff,
right?
And recruiting investments or investors and taking them on trips in Panama and showing them how legit everything was. And so now I've got millions of dollars that are now lost, and I'm wrestling with what the heck am I doing with my life now? So that wake-up call came in the form of a knock on my door. 2 FBI agents show up. They sit me down. They ask me questions for 4 hours about everything I knew about my time in Panama and where this guy may be living and my own involvement in it. And I'm just thinking, okay, now I'm really going to prison.
Now you're really
And I was like, I remember telling those guys, like, I will do anything to help you guys. I was kind of pleading with them, like, let's do a sting. Like, send me down to where I was like, I'll work for the FBI, baby. I will flip on this guy so fast. And
yeah, he really
but
put you in a bad situation.
It turned into me just being in contact with these guys. They'd call me and they'd ask me questions as they're trying to crack the case. Yeah. And it turned into that new spell of forced repentance, reflection.
God,
what am I doing in my life?
Yep.
And every time this happened to my life, my identity just gets stripped right down to the ground. You know, my identity is like, as a cool kid going to Boise State, now it's like, dude, you're actually a bank robber. That's what everybody thinks about you. Yeah. And now people are like, what were you doing in Panama? What was going on down there? And I'm like, dude, I can't even talk about it. Legally, I can't even talk about it. I've got zero thing to show. I've got nothing to show for my life right now. I've got all the money has been seized. Everything is gone. And people ask me what I'm doing with my life, and I can't even tell them. I had no identity. And so, you know, so I'm like, what do I do with my life? And it turns into another, like, well, I'm just going to wait. While I was in Panama, I remembered that one of the places I used to hang out down there was the Panama Yacht Club. And I loved those guys, dude. It looked like they were having such a good time. Looked like they'd figure out the key to life because they worked on a yacht. They would come into these little ports from Panama to Costa Rica to the Mediterranean, party for 4 days, get back on their yacht, go to the next thing. I was like, dude, I always thought that sounds awesome. And so when I was trying to think, what do I even do with my life? I reached out to a guy named Ruslan who had been working as a mechanic on one of these yachts. I was like, dude, how do I get into yachting? I'm just going to reset my life. And
it's so interesting, this story, as I'm listening. It's like you keep trying to reset it without God.
Exactly, dude.
And it just keeps failing.
I keep trying to reset.
That's the common story with a lot of people.
And I did all the Ecclesiastes things. It was like, I'm going to try pleasure. I'm going to try making a bunch of money. I'm going to try seeing the world. Because yachting to me was like, I'm just going to go back to the person that was just exploring and trying things, and I'll get paid to do it.
Right.
And so he's like, dude, just go to a major yachting center, start knocking doors, and see if anybody will hire you. So I booked a Greyhound ticket from Boise to Fort Lauderdale. I've got no money, no plan. I just knew that I needed to do something. So get to Fort Lauderdale, and come to find out, the yachting world is a huge party, dude. It's like, dude, I had no idea. Again, I'm like, I'm thinking, dude, I'm just going to be mopping and like helping serve. And it's like the yachting world is like, it's all party. It's work hard, play hard. I'd never heard that term. Yeah. And that's all it is. It's like you work really hard and you polish and you get a bunch of money and you're in this tropical location with beautiful people and rich people, and then you just party. Yeah. And so I was like, okay, I guess I'm doing this again.
It's like the prodigal son.
Dude, it was
all the money and then just blow it away.
Yep. And so I get a job at on a yacht called Diamond Girl, based out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and I was loving it and polishing, and I was living in a little yacht house where people live when they're on shore. And then Diamond Girl starts doing its little tour. It's in season now, and it goes from Fort Lauderdale to Bahamas, and it's got all the Caribbean mapped out. And they're like, if you want to come with us, you're in. And so I was like, sweet, I'm doing it. I'm working on a yacht. I'm a deckhand, and now I just get to go from charter to charter where people come on and I'll serve them. And dude, we get to the Bahamas, and I'm like, another wake up call, because the Bible college confession, God, you're real. I don't know how to live for you, but I believe in you. Every time I had a new wake-up call, it was like, this ain't it. It's not just partying at Boise State. It's not just making a bunch of money and living in a party city in Panama. It's not exploring the world and just taking cool pictures. And so when I got to the Bahamas, I'm feeling that emptiness, that vanity of Ecclesiastes. And one night in the Bahamas, me and another deckhand go out, hanging out. Is very common. Yachts pull up to like the nicest little part of the harbor. You usually have casinos and little malls on around. So we go into one of the casinos, and we have a layover in the Bahamas. We're going to hang out, and we immediately get paired up with a bachelorette party, of course. And it's like fishing with dynamite. You're working on a yacht. These women are coming from the States to do a bachelorette party in the Bahamas. It's like, that's their
and a yacht party,
and they're like, we just met some yachties. They're so excited. So I get one of them just clinging to me.
Perfect storm.
Yep. And so So I go back. The bachelorette party eventually, comes back to the boat, and in that mix-up, I'm in bed, and there's all sorts of partying going on.
Just
let's put it that way.
Part, yeah.
And I get a knock in the twilight hours of the morning, and it's the AKs in my face, dude. It's
Federales?
Yes, it's the Bohemian federal guys, and they're like, get out of your cabin. There's been a crime reported on this. I'm like, what?
Oh my, Tucker, dude, God's grace on your life is like
yes.
God had,
and so I'm like,
God had a huge plan for your life.
What the heck happened last night? I'm thinking, it felt like I was in the movie Clue. I was like, did somebody get murdered? Like, what happened? Like, what are we doing here? And so we get up there. It was like Clue, dude. They pulled the captain. We have on our little yacht. Yeah. It was like captain, chef, first mate,
this
engineer,
story is so
deckhand.
intense.
We're all sitting around, and we got the Bohemian police, dude. And it was I could tell it was makeshift because. Yeah. And they're strapped with AKs. Yeah. And they had the classic Bohemian helmets, the little rim helmet. Yeah. And then the chief was rolling around with a neck pillow. I was like, dude, what's this? Like, what is oh my God.
Just in case he gets tired.
Yeah. I was like, why is this guy got a girl? It's a girl. So I was like, why is this girl got a neck pillow on? I was like, I don't know if I trust this investigation. You know what I mean? And so I'm just sitting there, and I see them. They're pulling sheets from all of the cabins. In the yacht, and I'm like, dude, why are they pulling my sheets? I was just sleeping, just hanging out. And so they just collect the evidence, they go back, and then I'm just polishing with the deckhand. I was like, dude, what happened? Yeah, what did you do last night? Because this guy was wild. Yeah. And he's like, dude, I got down, but it was totally cool. Like me and this girl got down, but it was totally cool. And I was like, all right, like that was weird. Another one of those like. Yeah. And they come back, they roll in their little police golf cart, and neck pillow lady comes back. And she's like, you two, we want to question you. And they take me down to the little Bohemian police station. And they're like, you're being placed under arrest till further notice while we investigate this crime. And I'm like,
unbelievable.
What, me?
Yeah.
I'm checking in. They're like, take your shoelaces off. Because they said they just wanted to interview me.
Yeah.
They're like, no belt, no shoelaces. I was like, for an interview?
Yeah.
That's weird. I'm down, though. I don't care. I'm just a kid from Idaho. I trust everybody. Here you go. And they throw me in this jail. And it was like, dude, it reminded me, the laughter comes because it reminded me of Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah. It was like dirt jail. Like a bunch of guys like laughing at me and yelling at me, and I'm thinking, dude, who knows? Maybe this might be the time that
this might be it.
Maybe I'm just gonna get accused of a crime and have to admit that. I mean, not that I did it, but just admit this is my fate, dude. Eventually, I can't keep getting arrested and having all these close calls.
Yeah, very, very gnarly close calls.
Yeah, gnarly close calls.
What happened when you were in jail?
So while I'm in jail. My future hangs over my head, and I essentially, this is what you were describing as your point of no return. For the first time in my life, it wasn't just I believe in you, but I said, God, I don't actually care anymore. I don't care if I get out of jail or not. I don't care if maybe I'm just going to live in the Bahamas as a labor camp worker. I don't know how any of this works. Yeah. I'm offshore. I don't know how the legal system works. Yeah. So I just kind of said, God, whatever your plan is, I'm actually going to live for you. And it was the Ecclesiastes recap. It was like, I know it's not just traveling the world. I know it's not making a bunch of money. I know it's not just partying. Whatever your plan is, I'm going to live for you. And little did I know that I was only going to be sitting in that jail for like a day and a half. And then the captain comes out. He's like, you're coming with me. The other deckhand,
he stayed.
I never know what happened, but they were like, actually, you guys look so similar. We just arrested both of you, and we needed that guy. We've talked to the people on the yacht, and they said it was this guy. And I'm like, okay, but I needed that moment. Yeah, I needed a moment to have everything in my life completely blacked out and say it no longer mattered. My identity and being a yacht guy or being a sales guy or being just a fun-loving dude, that's all. I don't want any of it. I'm just going to now actually live for you for the rest of my life.
Okay. We have 7 minutes left. I know there's a couple other details, but you got back to Boise. Yeah. What did that look like with you surrendering your life to Christ? For those people that are listening right now, and they're like, this guy's a lot of crazy stories, but they're also like, well, I've had a DUI. Yep. I went to jail. I got blamed for something. There was some crooked, crime stuff that, could have happened that my name came up. I mean, it's so funny because like everyone can experience similar stuff, maybe not as intense of going to jail, but there's always, when you're not walking with God and you're living just a life for yourself, and you could just, and you're hanging out with kind of like in the party scene, you could end up in bad situations.
Yes.
On accident. Like,
totally.
you could just be drinking and end up in a DUI, and you could hit someone and you might be facing life in prison just for a stupid night of drinking some beer or whatever.
Yep.
What'd you do when you got back? What did fully committed, I'm going to live my life for you look like?
For me, it was having, because I think every moment of a wake-up call puts your identity into question.
Right.
And for me, for the very first time, I actually identified as a Christian. Mm-hmm. So I actually knew, which answered all the other questions.
Right.
So before I'd come back to a new place, I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing here.
Right.
Now I didn't care what people thought about me for the first time in my life.
Your identity was in Christ.
My identity is a Christian. So now I can do anything. Now I took a job as a dishwasher at 30 years old or 29 at the time. I was like, I can actually just be a dishwasher. I don't have to do anything other than follow Jesus.
Yeah.
And I can serve. That's amazing. I can volunteer at a church. I can go to Bible studies, and it doesn't matter who thinks anything different of me.
Doesn't matter.
I can go into a church and no one has to know me. It doesn't. I don't care what you think about me
so sick.
anymore.
I love that.
My identity is solved.
Yeah.
I finally know that I believe in Jesus and I'm going to live for him. And after that, it doesn't matter. And so for the first time in my life, I was able to go to a new location or set up a new thing and have no tug of war. I didn't have to worry about anything. I was like, it's over. The tug of war is over. I am going to follow Jesus and I do not care. And I think it was so fresh where I had basically said I'll live in prison or I'll, live on a whatever I need to do, that everything felt like gravy, dude. Everything felt like the free gift of a new day. Like I'm actually just here at a church, meeting new people and learning about Jesus. For the first time, I was like, this is great. I don't need anything else.
When you're saying that, I think that last section was just so awesome, the way you said about the identity. And I think when you look at life and people with mental health and just like, with the LGBTQ plus whatever, and just or like people or how people, what music they listen to, everything's find identity. So that people are finding their identity through life situations, their music, or they identify who they're sleeping with or whatever. Yep. But the peace comes, everyone's looking for Jesus, a relationship with God, because when you have your identity in Christ, that's where you have your peace, and nothing else matters. Because all the different situations that you put yourself into is because you're trying to find your identity. Like, am I going to find myself by traveling the world? Am I going to, maybe that's my identity. I just travel, and that's how I found myself, or whatever it is. But you found it when you just finally said, I don't care anymore.
I don't care.
And dude, I could personally relate to that.
Yeah.
When I was also in Panama City and I gave my life to Christ, and I at that point I didn't care anymore. About nothing. And that's when the peace came, and it didn't matter who I was or what people thought about me. And that's where the peace comes. So encourage the people. We got 2 minutes left. People that are listening right now. Well, actually, let me end it with this. What do you do now?
So
since
now
you found Christ, I know there was a big process between giving your life to Christ to where you're at now. So that's a whole nother show.
And a whole nother show. But in 1 minute, just going back to the very beginning of the story, I had a mom who said, trust God and everything will work out. I had a dad who said, try the world. During this whole story, my mom had peace. God's going to take care of him. Mm-hmm. My dad was nervous, like this guy could die, end up in prison. What's he doing in his life? My mom had peace because when I was a young child being dedicated in a church, a pastor, straight-laced, suit and tie, non-charismatic, but just Holy Spirit guy said, this guy's going to be a pastor someday. So my mom held that little prophetic word in her heart, and all through the ups and downs, she said, I still trust that someday God is going to work this out and he's going to become a pastor. And to end the story, me just getting involved, the Lord did have a plan that was somehow he used all of the chaos to get me exactly where he wanted me. And so now I am a pastor at the church that I came just to serve in. And I've been here now for 7 years as the lead pastor, but I've been in ministry since 2011, so 12 years.
And people that don't know you, from the show is, you didn't come here to be a pastor, but God, through a series of events that happened, you were placed there. So it wasn't like you were like, I'm going to be a pastor.
No.
You just basically found your identity in Christ. And you followed him. And ever since then, you've been following him. God has been opening the doors for you, and he's taking you on this journey. Obviously, you're married, you got kids.
Yep.
You're here at Calvary Chapel, Boise, which is actually it's a mega church of Idaho, right here in the city. And God is continuing to use you to do great things. I personally think, dude, this story is amazing, man. I mean, just evangelistically, this story can relate. You're a kid from Idaho, right? I mean, you're an adult now, but you grew up here in Idaho, but this story can relate to literally.
Yep.
As we're sitting here, I'm like, this story can relate to so many people from like New York City, LA.
Yeah.
You're just like, I grew up in Idaho, a little country town.
Yeah.
No.
I tried it all.
This story is seriously global. So, dude, thank you for being on the show. Check out Calvary Chapel, Boise when you're here. It's in Idaho. It's the main city down here. And don't forget to go to Ryan Ries Official on YouTube. Subscribe, share the videos. I actually have a really awesome another show with you just talking about faith stuff.
Yep.
That's also on my channel as well. Go to thewhosoevers.com. Book us. If you want to donate to our mission is the Great Commission. We invade schools publicly, high schools, colleges, universities. We do church events as well. Our whole thing is we want to get in front of people and let them know that God loves them and he has a plan for them. So we could hopefully save them from making so many crazy mistakes like this guy.
Yep.
And like me, you know my story. I have many stories of running from God and God showing up. I woke up in jail, ended up in DUI, a lot of different things. And yet it wasn't until I fully surrendered and said, I don't care. I want you. And that's when my whole life changed. Peace.
Peace.
This has been The Ryan Ries Show. To connect and find out more about Ryan, click on ryan-ries.com. Check us out next Saturday at 9 p.m. for The Ryan Ries Show.